So we want 15 minutes plus.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah, we have 20 minutes.
Okay. For the speaker.
Yeah, 20 minutes for the speaker, and there is like a 20 minutes for the discussion.
Yeah. So So,
Yeah, I will start everything, and then basically we can maybe we can let you chat if you want, or we can sit in the front, wherever, or on the side.
I can get up and down.
Yeah.
But without taking it away.
Yeah.
So 20 minutes. Okay, so I'll give them a 2-minute warning. And,
Yeah, I think 2 minutes warning is fine.
then they can all. Can they come to this? No, they can't.
No, I think I
Just
would-
us. We're not
yeah.
such a big group.
Yeah, and I think that it would be nice if they don't stand up. We can say that we make it more relaxed and they don't have to, stress that they have to answer questions. More, I'd say, English style than Central European style discussions.
Is that Central European style?
Yeah, it's like you're supposed to, in some old-fashioned conferences, you're supposed to, when you ask questions, you're supposed to stand up, and the person is answering after something. Nobody knows what to do.
All right. You get the whole 2 minutes. I'll wait for a pizza over. And then we won't ask questions straight after discussion. I think, yeah, we're going to start here. So you're working with Jose Maria? The other group, there's 2 research groups about
Okay, we'll be starting in 2 minutes. Just a reminder from the museum and from the director of the museum, please feel free to wander around the Archeological Museum upstairs to see the exhibitions. That's the temporary exhibition, which is in the back. And the military museum as well, so on that part, there's another access, so feel free, of course, with the budget to go and travel. Tomorrow, or on any other day, you can basically also go to the Osolineum and point to where it is. There is another exhibition there, those especially coins and numismatic exhibitions, if you're interested in small art objects, basically. Okay, I'm giving the microphone to Professor Pradze So please share the first part. Matthias, you will have to sit starting for your talks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jakub. Jakub has given me the honor of chairing the first session, which I'm very happy to do, and to welcome our first speaker, who is Matías Biro Sarrias from the University of Granada in Spain. And Matías is speaking on the subject you can see on the screen. So, Matías, please come and talk to us. You have 20 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. So I'm going to present my work about the first problematics and results of the study of the architecture of the Alcázar de Beira with a city castle, and how we understand the Nasrid border through its architecture. So first of all, the site is located in south of Spain in Almeria, and it's located in a valley surrounded by 3 mountain ranges and by the Mediterranean Sea at the east. It's up a hill around 300 meters high and controlling visually the entire area of the valley. So this site is interesting because of the importance of the settlement during the medieval period, and also because it have a border situation during more than 2 centuries. This city is conquered by the Christian in 1488, and only 30 years afterward there is an earthquake that destroyed the entire settlement, and the population leaves this site. So the project is led by the University of Granada, and it's a will of the city hall of the Vera city to excavate this local patrimony. So the team is made of teachers and PhD students of the University of Granada and volunteers from Spain and other countries. So to study this architecture, we have mostly fieldwork data, because the historical sources are very few and they don't talk about specific architectural elements. And we also have some prospection from the 80s, but they are they don't have a lot of information about architectonics elements also. So the field work and the data we gather are the main elements we based our interpretation on. So first of all, we made an inventory of all the architectonic elements of the Alcázar, an inventory of structure, of construction techniques, and an entire photographic coverage about the Alcázar, but also all the settlements, all the city. We made different drawings, maps, and blueprints in order to settle down our interpretation, and we try to make a 3D model as often as we can. We made some before the excavation, and we make every year new ones, also of the Alcázar and the entire settlement. So as you can see in the first blueprint, we divided the Alcázar with the city castle in 9 different areas in function of their distribution, construction techniques, or function. And we divided them also by construction technique. In this second image, you can see the main 4 techniques of construction that are used in the Alcázar. The first one in yellow is a tapia hormigonado with framed material wall, very similar to Opus Caementicum from the Roman period. In red, we have tapia calicostrado with kind of the same, but with the use of earth in the material. And then we have cursed stone wall and irregular stone walls. So in each category, we have more techniques, different kind of tapial or stone wall, but that are the main categories. In the image in the top, you can see the base of a tower that is made with the irregular stone and a huge quantity of mortar. In the top right, you can see irregular stone walls that divide another building made of tapial hormigonado. In the bottom right, you have a cursed stone wall made of sandstone that is included in a larger construction of tapial calicostrado. In the bottom left, you have this tapial calicostrado, so it's a rained material wall with earth. And the last one is the tapial hormigonado, with similar to the Opis caementicum, with very resistant to humidity, and it's in very good shape after more than 500 years of exposition. So here in this blueprint, I tried to make a visually to make visual the chronology of the construction of the Alcazar. So the darker the older, and the last phases of construction in red. So you can see that the older parts are in the center, and they are mostly of tapial hormigonado. And the lighter, so the more recent, are the surrounding wall that are part of a will of refortificate the entire zone. And in red, the last construction are small elements in the inner part of the Alcazar, trying to reshape the building already existing, changing function or distribution. So So now we have seen quickly the information we have about the site. I can present you some of the results of the interpretation of this architecture. First of all, in this settlement, we have archaeological material from the 11th century. So we know that the first occupation are from the 10th, 11th, but we have elements about the 11th. The Alcazar, the construction of the Alcazar begin with the phase of construction with the tapial hormigonado in the center, and its techniques very used by Califal or early Taifas population. So it corresponds very well with the chronology. So the more likely the beginning of the Alcazar is during this Califal or early Taifa period, with this construction in tapial calicostrado. Then we know that the city and the Alcazar at the same time grows because of the location of the city. First of all, it controlled the entire valley and the mountain ranges with the agricultural settlement, mining camps, the road between Granada in the south, Almeria and Granada, to large city of the north like Lorca, Murcia, or Cartagena, and it has also a connection with the Mediterranean Sea. So that makes the city growth, and it get a bigger political paper. So during the growth of the city, the Alcazar grows also, and we see that in each period of the history, the occupation of the site, we have different type of construction, and the construction technique change at the same time. For example, for the tapial calicostrado in red in this blueprint, we know it's a very common technique in the early Nasrid period, and it corresponds very well with the will of making this area very well defended, because it began to be the border with the Castilian kingdom. So with the rise of the Kingdom of Granada and the border taking its limits here in this city between Granada and Castilla, we have one of the biggest phase of construction. So the first one, I told you, it was the surrounding wall in Tapial Calicostrado, and then we have others phase of construction. Most of them are reconstruction and reorganization of the Alcázar. It's kind of difficult to understand which construction is the end of the Nasrid kingdom and which one is the beginning of the Castilian period, because the construction techniques are very similar. Then in 1488, Christians take the city, so they occupy the city and the castle. But some sources tell us the population is lower during the Christian period. In all the cities and castles the Christians take in the region, they rebuild and reorganize the defense. So it have to be the same in Beira. But as told before, it's difficult to understand this very particular connection between late Nasrid period and early Christian. Then, only 30 years after the take of the Christian, there is an earthquake destroying the entire city in Alcázar. So, as you can see on this photo, there are some large blocks of stone up the hill. There are this kind of blocks that fall apart the hill and destroy all the city. So the historical sources say the population leave totally the site and never go back, but we have some archaeological evidence that prove they came back at least temporarily, and I think they reused the Alcázar at least as a watchtower. So this project is a 6-year project, and we excavate 3 years. So we have still plenty of time to finish our work in the Alcázar, and we are still looking for new construction phases, structural relations, function and circulation within the Alcázar, and also chronological marker into each structure, each building. In the three first years, we excavate all the parts you can see in green, and this year we are going to excavate the 2 zones in red. The excavation is going to begin in 2 weeks from now, and we are first focusing on the tower named G because of the relation it has with the inner part of the Alcázar and then the first occupation. And then the west part of the Alcázar, it's interesting because it's connecting the 2 main doors we know of the Alcázar. The one is in the west between F and I, and another one is close to the A. So it will allow us to understand if they work together or if they were from 2 different periods. So we still have 3 years to understand better the function, chronologies, and how the construction techniques are a testimony of the political and social changes in medieval and post-medieval period. And I hope I gave you a clear overview of my work, and hope to come back to give you the final interpretation within the 3 years for coming. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay.
More complicated than usual.
Oh, okay. Okay. So whilst Jakub does work some magic with the presentations, we can announce our next speaker, who is Camilla Felicioni, and Camilla is collaborating with our Paolo Gide And the team at Arena, the project is the south of Italy, in Calabria. And Camilla is going to talk to us about Arena this afternoon, the case of Arena, in comparison with other castles in the region. So, thanks. So, it's a great pleasure to welcome you.
Hello to everyone, good afternoon. I'm Camilla Felicioni and I'm here to present the case of Arena, the study of the castle. In particular, I want to compare it with some other castle in the nearest area. The project of Arena is a project led by the University of Siena in join with the Soprintendenza dell'Archeologia delle Belle Arti e Paesaggio per la città metropolitana di Reggio Calabria, Vibo Valencia, in the south of Italy. It's a very long, thing. And with the municipality of the city of Arena. The castle of Arena is located in a marginal mountainous area of Calabria in the southern part of Italy, as you can see. It's surrounded by the regional natural park of the Serre. In particular, the castle of Arena is located in the province of Vibo Valencia, and the localization, the geographical site is very important because it is in the middle of the province of Vibo Valencia, at the same distance from the two seasides, from Mar Tirreno and Mar Ionio. So this could be a very important point for the communication road, for the road networks. And also, we know that in 1826 map made by the Austrian government suggests that Arena lays along the route connecting Caulonia and Hipponion to ancient Greek and later medieval towns. But also we know that, as you can see from this map, okay, you can see that Arena is very near from other important points like Mileto, which was the capital of Norman area, probably, near from Vibo Valencia, and also two other town called Serra San Bruno, which was a very important pilgrim town, and also Soriano Calabro, which has an important pottery library. So we know also that until 1520, Arena used to be the center of a juridical district. According to the written sources, it was called Feudo di Arena, including a large inland area with several villages and extended forests. As you can see in this image, we try to reconstruct the hypothetic route by from Caulonia and Hipponion, and we know that the route could pass through Arena's village. So it's an important point to the route connection in this area. Focusing on the main point of this research, we know that the structure of the castle seems to have Norman origin. In fact, the Arena Castle is called Norman Swabian Castle, and it was probably a huge fortification. We know that it is 600 meters under the sea, so in a very high point, elevation point for the view. And we know that probably the first phase between 11th and 12th century consisted in a donjon. This could be the donjon located here. In this is the 3D model made by our collaboration. Sorry, consists this donjon possibly linked to a lower fortified enclosure, the Bascour. The excavation, unfortunately, still don't confirm the layout of the first fortification, even if we have now some hints about it. Focusing on the excavation data, an intensive excavation has begun in order to understand the development of the site over time. Unfortunately, we have a problem with the architectonical structure of the castle. We know that a big earthquake in 1783 ruins all the castle, and also we know that in 1981 the castle was managed by a huge reconstruction. We don't know if this reconstruction is useful to understand the actually and the really structure of the castle. So the research focused on a portion of the castle. You can see by the images this part, the southeast wing of the castle. Currently, we have excavated 180 square meters, in which 4 rooms, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 6 walls there were identified and analyzed. The biggest wall, this one in the middle, running east-west, and separates the central area where the bedrock there has been cut from a plateau. And you can see on the bedrock we have several post holes, which we have to understand the functionality from the southern portion where a stratigraphy is preserved. Unfortunately, the earthquake makes a lot of problem on the castle, but we know that by the big earthquake we have a huge collapse that help us with the stratigraphy, because the stratigraphy is preserved under the collapse of the earthquake. So this is the only good things that earthquakes do at the castle. During the excavation from July to October 2023, we found several walls. This is the reconstruction of the walls made by Metashape software, whose interpretation is still puzzling. The main one could be part of the Norman fortification, while the other 4 may divide different rooms of the early periods, as I said. We found another important things at the end of the excavation in October. We found a very huge trace of exfoliation of probably the biggest wall of the castle. But now we have to understand really the function of these traces. The smallest smaller walls are made by clay and stones, totally different texture from the biggest one, which is made in solid masonry, made by square stones with mortar, with traces of restoration and subsequently shaving at equal distance, approximately every 1.5 meters. So this is the excavation data about the walls and about the architecture inside the castle. But we know that we have a lot of architectonical elements. The actual structure of the castle reflects of changes occurred by different domination on the castle. We know that after the Norman, the castle has been always occupied by concubine family during the Hohenstaufen period between 12th and 13th century, by in Angevin period around 50 years in 13th century, and the Aragonese period between 14th and 16th century. At the end, in the 17th century, the concubines were replaced by Caracciolo families, which held the fief until 19th century. These things, all these changes brought several elements, creating a complex situation to understanding. In fact, we know also that the castle probably was transformed from a fortification and Norman fortification to a maison fort. We try to understand the similarities and difference between other castles in the area. Why that? Because one way to try to reconstruct the different phases of the castle could be compare it with similar architecture. We can find similar buildings and architectural elements, especially in this case the monumental portal in neighboring areas. We focus on the province of Reggio Calabria, not in Vivo, because sometimes in this province we have very similar architectural elements, like Pellicano Castle and of Gioiosa Ionica, and Carafa Castle of Roccella Ionica. You can see the arch of the portal and the stones in the arch. It's very similar with the arena, and also the relationship between the portal and the tower, the Angevin towers. We can find further similar buildings in the castle of Reggio Calabria. In fact, the decorative elements, this one, it's very similar to the decorative elements in the portal of Arena, and also the Aragonese tower. We found very similarities also in the Abbey of Trinity of Mileto, where the wall texture, this one, is very similar with the Arena ones. However, these two buildings have totally different chronologies. The castle of Reggio can be dated in 16th century, while Mileto in the 11th century. So this allowed us to affirm that the castle has effectively several phases, but that it's very complex to recognize them properly, also because of several earthquakes involved it, and also the reconstruction. So I try to understand the only things that could be useful to understand for us, so the planimetry of the castle. We can see, comparing the castle of Arena and the other Norman Swabian castle in the province of Vibo Valencia, we can see that none of them have the same planimetry. Should be noted, however, that the most of Norman castles have a quadrangular shape with 4 towers at the corners. Vibo Valencia has a different shape, but only because several remodelings occur on it. But Roccella and Vivona too has this quadrangular planimetry. Arena has a geometric shape with 4 angles as well, even if the current layout is the outcome of further remakes on the Angevin Aragonese ages. So, at the end of this leads us to ask a really important question. Considering the post holes on the bedrock, considering the techniques of the smallest walls, and considering the planimetric with several remodelings, has the castle a Norman foundation, or it has early pre-existence like Byzantine period? Well, obviously, we will hopefully be able to answer to this question after the next and the final campaign. So this is a preliminary study, and we want to make this question for the next campaign. Well, thank you for the attention.
So what's the technical assistant?
Yeah.
Does this? Does this work?
Of course, it's like usual thing is that it's a job for students.
It's a job.
So I finally in a correct position.
We can welcome our next speaker for the afternoon, who is Michael Odbyła. He's coming from the Institute of Archaeology of the Czech Academy of Sciences in Wrocławia, and he's also talking, as the other talks so far, on the subject of castles, and in particular on a rather well-known example, the castle of Pradze. So,
thank you. Good evening, everybody. Topic of my dissertation studies and my work as well is the development of settlement structure of eastern end of the Pradze castle. We can see it around here, this really messy area. This is it in the probably oldest depiction of Prague Castle from the south. And yeah, this one doesn't provide exactly the answers we are seeking, but for those from abroad, we are looking at Czech Republic, and in the very heart is its capital city of Prague, and in the very heart of Prague itself lies Prague Castle. Here in the corner we can see the purple area is my area of interest. Currently spanning both sides of Jirská Street and Golden Lane, probably the most well-known place in Prague Castle. It purposely avoids all the religious buildings, monasteries and churches just west of it. And of course the Acropolis itself, which is entirely different topic. The reason why this specific area of the castle is a subject of my studies can be pictured in following depictions. Because as early as the 19th century, people started to be interested in historical reconstructions of the castle, which in its present state doesn't remind anything about its Romanesque or even older eras. And the very first depictions were based solely on written sources. So the most notable places are usually the gates, fortifications, and religious buildings. So that's exactly what we can see in this depiction from late 19th century. Which I find interesting is this set of shrubberies that tries to cover the fact that nobody ever mentions the eastern end of the Prague Castle. The similar problems continues basically up until the 21st century, which as late as 2003, we can see that the mentioned area is still mostly empty. The research of Prague Castle was focused, and it's visible even on these reconstructions, mainly on the Acropolis, and starting from 1925, the vast excavations across the center of the castle were conducted. For the eastern part, the first serious attempt at understanding its older structure came with historical building surveys, starting mainly around 1970s, but with the very first examples specifically following the Romanesque era fortifications conducted by Karel Fiala in 1933. Since 1960s, the first genuine excavations were conducted on the eastern end of the castle, and thanks to the foundation of Committee for Research of Prague Castle, it was possible to not only conduct them as rescue excavations, but to expand them in order to answer our most pressing questions about the development of these parts of the castle. On the very top, we can see the two phases of settlement in half of the 13th century. In Lobkowicz Palace is these little buildings, as we can see in the very latest depictions from 2019, where the castle itself is filled with buildings all over, not only in the most prominent areas of Acropolis and around. For understanding still mostly empty eastern part of the castle, it's good to look for analogies. And the very close one are exactly at the Acropolis of a castle, specifically under third courtyard, where the vast excavations were conducted from 1925 onwards and are still subject of intense research. And in the very bottom, we can see screen captures of latest output of project skryto pod povrchom, or hidden under surface, which analyzes these areas. And we can see in the 10th century the wooden constructions scattered in the middle of the area, which analogically we can expect something similar all across the castle. And in 13th century, mortar and stone houses pushed on the very edge of the fortifications. The history of archaeological excavations starts in the 1960s in a person of Ivan Borkovsky. We can see him in the center of this photograph. His greatest achievements in here, in eastern part, were made during the renovation of Černá věž, or Black Tower, on the very east end, where he unearthed the cross-section across the several layers of fortifications and the moat from half of 13th century, since leveled and currently not visible at all. And to understand how big these developments were, it was only he who technically confirmed the full extension of Prague Castle beyond the monastery in the center in 10th century, since in Chronicles of Cosmas, one of the most complete depictions of state of Czech state in early Middle Ages, there are mentions of leaving the Prague Castle through the gate right behind the St. Jiří Monastery, which would indicate that the castle ended far before its full extension and far before its full current size. In the 70s and 90s, the excavations continued during the renovations of huge palaces on the very southern front of the castle, and several new buildings and multiple early Middle Ages fortification lines were unearthed, which gave us the clear depictions of the size and shape of the castle in these areas. And in the 21st century, we are firmly in the rescue excavation territory. So for vast quantities of areas unearthed during 28 until 2010 excavation of basically the whole street system of eastern part of a castle, we can see that it was very shallow but very wide. And where did it lead us? After 65 years of excavations, we are looking at 46 separate archaeological events. And since they are mostly based on rescue excavations, there is a huge spread of information value they potentially present. And as you can see from this map, there is very little areas in the eastern part of the castle that weren't yet excavated. So any questions and any possible answers we can bring probably lies in already excavated areas, and we have to work what we have. The main questions obviously are based on settlement transformations between the huge palaces of early modern era and Gothic narrow lots preceding them, and even earlier first remnants of constructions in here. There is a translation of communication network issue in whole area, since the current position of Irska Street, that's the main colored one, was transferred further south somewhere during early Middle Ages, and the question why and how it happened still remains, since in the middle here, Černá or Black Tower used to be gate tower and was since bricked over. Then there is an issue of development of land ownership, since before the palaces of huge families or important families across Czech Republic were founded in the southern part of the castle. There were several smaller and buildings of lesser importance in here, and especially the Golden Lane or Zlatá ulička in the very north has very rich history of changing of land and ownership. And obviously there is a summarization of existing knowledge. For methodological references, the first and obvious one is building catalog, or a summarization of data as we know them, based on the existing Archeologický atlas Pražského hradu, volume 1, or Archaeological Atlas of Prague Castle, published in 2009, and as a first and still sole volume, and based on this system, I'm trying to sort all the existing excavation in the southern and eastern part of the castle. For further expansion of the knowledge, I was looking at inspiration in Archeologii Hradčanských paláců specialized map, which works with spatial and temporal relations between cross sections across the excavation trenches, and we can see the example in here, where based on material culture we can create layers or multiple layers belonging to individual eras of castle and its development. The very red is 20th century, so we can ignore that, but around the still mostly preserved Romanesque fortifications in basements of several buildings, especially in the northern and southern end of the castle, we can see accommodating layers around. Based on this logic, I'm trying to build several cross sections across the entirety of research area. I currently know that not all of these would be possible and will be possible, especially because the vast empty spaces in between them, where it's impossible to connect all the situations in between each other when there are tens of meters of empty space in between. And of course, not all of them would have the same informational value. Probably the best one could be traced from the Golden Lane through the block of houses in the middle, numbers 8 to 10, and Rosenberg's Palace and the very south end of the castle. We can see that there are only several places which can be connected to the Romanesque era, and few more high medieval. I'm not sure if they are visible, but they are in green. What can be connected quite with a high degree of confidence is the levels of bedrock and the original unaltered terrain of the castle before human settlement. These have a big issue in the fact that the cross sections are not and couldn't be ever straight, and with the castle sloping on both sides to the east, to the south, and to the north, any movement of cross sections in the west and east axis results in different heights of terrain itself. And connecting these cross sections with the perpendicular ones brings very specific issues. We can see the published cross section from Golden Lane in here, and on a level of 251 meters above sea level, we can see that there is that's around the level of pavement in a Golden Lane in its very western part, and entirety of southern northern cross sections complies with this, and the perpendicular cross sections is 1 meter off, and 1 meter difference in height is admittedly quite a lot. I was trying to rectify this issue, and what I can tell, or what I would bet if I was a gambling man, is that this published cross section is kind of made up, and I based on this very part the entire height of Golden Lane cross sections, and now I have to look elsewhere because nowhere in the original documentations there are any traces of exact heights or any similar numbers. Other issues stemming from connecting different excavations together is that they are rarely fit. Even when we have precise numbers, and even when the excavations are spanning only several weeks, which is a case of these cross sections in the Irska Street, we can see that they are simply not connecting, and the question is which part should be trusted and which should be ignored, since there were plenty of people creating these documentations, and with the varying degree of quality or precision. The other thing that is illustrated on these cross sections, and it's very unfortunate, is that when you create a network of or grid of trenches before excavations itself and then follow them, you can hit the peculiar situation with this entire cross-section from east to west is built on top of the existing pre-modern construction of a sewage pipe. So none of these layers or none of these cross-sections carry any information about anything older than 18th century, which is unfortunate and can be seen in this perpendicular one, where basically entirety of the street is filled with modern sewage pipes and water pipes and similar interruptions of original terrain. The other way I can take with this information is correlating them with known segments of historical constructions. They are mapped in here, based partially on the historical building surveys, which are great and precise, but in a geographical sense, but not in a temporal sense. So all these colors span basically centuries, which is unfortunate for more precise division, but can be expanded further exactly by archaeological excavations, which bring new constructions into the existing network of known one from the standing structures. We can see here this one is very recent. This is 20th century construction, and as it was torn down, the rescue excavations connected with it unearthed the older high medieval structure and the Renaissance structure on the opposite side of the wall. For expansion of this kind of knowledge is very important to bring into question the currently non-existing structures, namely fortifications, which were subject of several older research works. Mapped in here, the red one is the very oldest moat unearthed by Dr. Borkowski, which proves the full extent of Prague Castle in earliest medieval times. And what is unfortunate that when this map specifically is superimposed on existing map of existing structures, we can see that there is something not entirely fitting. Especially in, we can see that the Černá věž, or Black Tower, is suddenly doubled. And I'm not trying to bash on any work done on these maps, since they span not only the Prague Castle but entirety of the city of Prague. So the precision apparently came second in effort to create a complete picture. What can be done further with existing knowledge, since it's very improbable that it would be expanded by further excavations, is something I was trying to avoid exactly by building the cross sections across the castle itself. Is building a database of all the trenches unearthed during the last 60 years and give them the temporal attributes to each of the polygons, which could be compared then we can in similarities with the field surveys. We would be seen that yes, there is some concentration of early medieval material culture in the with connection to the fortifications or with the standing structure, and that will be subject for my further work, because creation of this huge data set will take me probably longer than my studying tenure will last. So wish me luck. And that will be all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Really highlighting the difficulties of the complex So, our final speaker for this session, we will have a discussion after the final talk before we go for our coffee break. But our final speaker for this session is Gino Saba from Pradze Catholic University in Hungary. And she is presenting with her research on the evolution of the defensive architecture in medieval coastal Syria.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. The subject is about the defensive architecture and the evolution of these fortifications in medieval Syrian coast, to explore how these fortifications changed over time in response to new military technologies, political shifts, and economic resources. Starting with the Syrian coast, which is located on the western side of Syria. It has been always a valuable region because of its location on the Mediterranean Sea. This made it a target for conquest throughout history, and the different ruling groups built the existing fortifications to fix their needs. There are several factors caused these defensive structures to evolve throughout the medieval period. One of them is new military technologies like strong weapons, which forced the architects to create solid defense. Also, the political change, like conquering a new region, that led to the need for new fortifications. And finally, the amount of money a ruler had determined the details of their defenses. The defensive system has changed and developed during the medieval period. In the early centuries, the coastal region was influenced by the Byzantine Empire, and their style represented by strong defense of huge walls, gates, and forts. After that, the Umayyads were the first Muslim ruler of Syria. They reconstruct and build strong city walls with towers to defend the coast from both land and sea-based attacks. After that, the Crusaders came and they made significant additions to the defensive system or the defensive structures on the coast. They built new castles and improved the existing ones. These fortifications were designed to withstand long siege with features like multiple walls, deep moats, and narrow openings for archers. The Mamluk worked to repurpose and adopt the existing fortifications and took advantage of their strong strategic locations. Also, they constructed the new structures to increase the defensive capacity of the region. And to discuss these systems, I had three sites. The first one is the castle of Salah ad-Din. It's a blend of Byzantine foundation with later Ayyubid and Mamluk expansions, located on a strategic location on high ridge. Its defensive system includes high, thick walls and multiple towers for surveillance and defense. Over the centuries, depending on the military needs, the natural cliff faces are incorporated into the fortress's defenses. And we can see here in the picture how the huge wall was in the castle and its location on the top of the hill. After that, Al-Markab Castle or Margat, it's a Crusader fortress, lies on the top of a hill overlooking the Mediterranean, offering strategic views and defensive capabilities. The most important about this castle is, or fortress also, we can say fortress about this site, that is, has massive walls and well-placed battlements for defensive operations, a deep moat surrounding the castle, and inner and outer courtyard system for layered defense. At the end, I have Safita Tower. It's a cylindrical structure located on the highest top of Safita city, overlooking several castles and fortresses along the Mediterranean. The tower served both as chapel and a fortress, with thick walls of limestone blocks and small windows for archers to defend the tower. To compare these systems between these sites, I have to highlight some points like strategic importance, the architectural features, military functionality, and the cultural integration. This analysis will show how the geographical locations and historical context shape the defensive architectures of these structures, each serving specific strategic needs and reflecting the architectural and military evolution of their respective periods. And in conclusion, we can see that from the Byzantine foundation to Mamluk adaptation, each period left its own marks on the landscape and contributed to the rich heritage of military architecture. Thank you. And here are the most important references that I have used in this research. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. So we have now some time for discussion. And thank you. We have some time for discussion. Is the discussion also being broadcast?
I think we won't. Yeah, it will be too complicated to do it. So
we don't need to pass around the microphone.
No.
Okay. So to those people who are listening on the internet, you can say, see you again at 5 o'clock.
More or less.
More or less.
Yeah.
See you again more or less at 5. Okay. Thank you. So we have some time for questions, and we want to make the discussion informal. Okay, so we won't make the speakers come and sit at the front or stand, so that you can ask them difficult questions. Instead we'll have some general discussion, but also questions to the speakers. So if you have a question for one of the speakers, please say to whom you are addressing the question. Okay, and then we can put it to them. I will walk around with this microphone so that you can do that. Because also we must forget our friends in this part of the room. So we're watching for you as well, in case you also have questions. And then also, if other of the speakers or other people would like to comment on the questions, please raise your hand and I shall bring you the microphone. Okay, so we have the first bid for a question here. Also, when you ask a question, please introduce yourself and say who you are.
I have a question, all of the speakers, if I may, about small farms and their interpretive potential. What about the potential of small farms? I understand that it is a preliminary phase of excavation of the two first mentioned cases, and those sites were affected by earthquakes. Does this mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you need to fight through the layers of rubble in order to get to the strata sequence related to the architecture? How do the small mines relate to the architecture after your excavations of the preliminary phase? I understand that in the third case, the earthquake was done by the archaeology to produce inconsistent documentation. And it was mentioned that there is great potential in the small mines and interpreting the architecture. How is it the other cases? I'm just curious.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now I'll try and see where the speakers are hiding. This one? Okay, great. Mikhail, thank you very much for taking that. Okay.
Hello again. One of the questions of my thesis was the social standing of the inhabitants of this area of the castle, since it's as much as a residence as it is a fortification. And in the written sources, there is a big difference between inhabitants of the northern part, which were usually the lower class people or soldiers, and between the residents of the southern part. And I was expecting some sort of difference in material culture in between. And the strange thing is the probably more valuable thing or more finds
We have still 2 minutes, so we go straight and then you're staying like okay, we are starting basically right now. The next chair for the session will be Monika Miloslavich from the University of Belgrade, and I'm going to tell the lazy guys at the end to move faster.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. So we should start the second session, please. So I will call Michael Lessa from Partnerem University. Medieval mining, political studies, the political economy of iron, and the Central European Middle Ages. So please, you can start your presentation.
No, don't worry. It's fine. Hi. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So, floor is yours.
Okay. Is everybody here actually? So it doesn't matter. So, minute?
It's okay. Yes, that's fine. I try to bring everyone up.
So we are waiting, but we will start now. I think we will start. Yeah.
Okay. So medieval mining. Hope nobody is afraid about some lame topic. So I can promise you I will not talk about mines, and I will also not talk about slags. Not about talking about metallographical stuff nobody's interested in. So what I'm going to talk about is, of course, production of iron or production of commodities, but I'm more interested in the, say, socioeconomic drivers and interdependencies between the guys who produce and the guys who consume. So all the stuff behind production, distribution, and consumption of commodities, and all of this during the early Middle Ages. And somehow I try also to combine it with the gradation according to production, to iron mining. Maybe some of you guys know that picture above. It's from the Annaberg altar, and I think it really looks like the picture undead, and it's actually from the First World War from Verdun, one of the places of major fights. So people might ask, why iron? How can we solve socioeconomic questions with iron? So, and for this, I want to go back to the good old times of Georges Duby, one of the great French historians of the Annales school. And he was, of course, relying to historical sources, not so much archaeology like we do. And he made the following statement for iron economy of medieval times. So he wrote, everywhere we have the same impression. Remains that very little iron was used for peasant tools. And then he writes, the peasants were ill-equipped to cope with the natural surrounding and most of the time worked with their bare hands. The primitive technical equipment clearly limited the individual's productive possibilities. So this is quite desolate. Guys were working with their bare hands on the ground. And of course, it fits to the 60s, or it says post-war narrative of desolate dark ages. And of course, this unfortunately prevailed quite a long time. And it's quite interesting also that Doby lived, of course, in the 60s, in let's say, heyday of the system clash between communism and capitalism, and his depiction of the Carolingian economy is somehow inspired by socialist command economy. So, of course, times have changed, and we as archaeologists discovered, especially in the second half of the 20th century, completely different picture we could draw. So, from settlements, workshops, burials, all the stuff, we know that, of course, there was a large demand for iron, there was an extremely large iron production, and a wide range of very refined, very sophisticated tools from agriculture, artisanal tools, weapons, stuff was, of course, known. And what is extremely important to recognize is not only to archaeological sources, but also to ethnographical sources. They know that there was some kind of existential interdependence between people who use agricultural implements, the farmers, and, of course, the iron workers who need to resharpen and repair all the stuff. So for the farmer, and this is, let's say, 90% of the people who lived in the Middle Ages, the iron worker was existential. So this is also, of course, true for most recent agricultural societies. For instance, in Africa, you can see in here. So what we can say is iron was an existential commodity, both for, let's say, commodities like plowshares and so on, and, of course, for valuables like swords, which were the F-16s of the early Middle Ages. So for me, it is an excellent topic to study resource access inequality in a political economic framework. So people ask, what is political economy? Yes, sounds Marxist. And it comes mainly from Marxism, this method. So for Marx, political economy was the study of structural relationships that defined the means of controlling wealth and creating inequality. Of course, he was more focused on state societies, capitalistic societies. But what we need to understand is for Marx, production was a social body and embedded in a social body and understood as a social object. Of course, since that time, a lot of anthropologists and archaeologists use these methods and refine them. So, for instance, to understand how power struggles and formations of hierarchies occur in societies, not only state societies, but also non-state societies and proto-states. This is very important, which we have in the early Middle Ages. So, to make it short, there's a brilliant quote by William Roseberry: political economy is an analysis of social relations based on unequal access to wealth and power. And in my talk, I want to talk about one specific method which I use here, and this is so-called craft specialization economies, or also called context of production. So in this model, according to this model, control of craft production is the basis for political economy, especially for early state societies like in early medieval Europe. So the question is quite simple: to what degree elites controlled or could have controlled craft production, in this case iron production? So the typical categories which are used since the 80s and 90s are the categories independent and attached. Maybe people who are dealing with production know it. They are describing a very fluid relation between producers and institutions. So I just quickly go through it. Independent production is determined by demand from an unspecified group of consumers, while the distribution of commodities is not restricted or controlled by political institutions. I think the best example is that rural blacksmith in the 18th century, he's just working for the market and some other guys in his town, he gets some beer and some corn and so on. So he's more or less independent. Attached production, by contrast, is defined by the existence of political institutions and the motivation to access prestige goods, like, for instance, the slave worker, a blacksmith who is producing swords only in some manor, or for some Viking Age lord, or whatever you want to imagine. And the other category, which is also important for me, which I'm working on, is the so-called centralized production, which is more or less something in between, and there specialists, iron workers, can develop in urbanized milieus and under increased population densities with accessibility to distribution flows, which means a regional market. And here the control of elites is somehow, they are there, of course, but it's not so strong as we imagine. And this all was perfectly written in Kalasinopoulos' dissertation 2003 about the political economy of craft production. This is in India, but still these methods are used. And such relationships have a considerable impact of the goods produced, as all you can imagine. The rural blacksmith in the village is, of course, doing completely different things than the blacksmith in castles, like we heard before. So another factor which I considered is the so-called ecological degradation, and I was here inspired by, in the last years, by the arrival of Marxist ecological critique of capitalism based on Marx theory about metabolism. I don't want to talk so much about it, but what is interesting that when reading, for instance, late medieval sources like here, we see that historically and also paleontologically and sedimentologically, we all know that the degradation of landscape is already attested in the Middle Ages. For instance, here, this is from a law book of Prince Bishop of Bamberg, and he writes for the middle of 14th century, hammer mills in Wilseck, it's a region in northeastern Bavaria, stopped working because the char burners exhausted the whole forest. So we can imagine, like in the picture from the First World War, everything was gone, dudes burned everything, and the whole production system stopped working. So I was asking myself, can we already see some kind of, let's say, ignoring the natural substratum in the proto-history, some kind of depletion of ecological sources? And here I want to try some kind of bold statement, we can discuss it later, that political economic involvement in production, like planned civil colonization, stuff like that, causes economical degradation already in the medieval times. So you must of course understand that in the 15th century or 14th, it was not the peasants who were running around for iron, because this was all part of attached or proto-industrialized iron production. So let's summarize it. We are working with proxies to understand political economic impact. And these are craft specialization, we heard it before, attached, independent, and centralized archaeological degradation, which I try to somehow build inside. And of course, this can have different degree, different scale, and spatial proximities. For instance, the proximity between village producing iron and to a castle and so on. So to understand all of this, I want to rush through 3 case studies. And I'll be talking about 2 regions from Bavaria and one in Southern Czech Republic, which I'm dealing in my dissertation. So let's start. The first case study of independent production comes from Bavaria, namely the early Palatinate. And iron played a very important role here until the 20th century, but this is not so important for us. But the early medieval history in the 8th, 9th century is practically unknown. So people were asking, was there a big iron production before? And only in recent archaeological excavations, it was shown and proved that intense iron production already existed in the 8th and 9th century here near Amberg. This is a small Bavarian village with good beer, and a small town, let's say, already in the early Middle Ages. So that leads us to my case study, which I evaluated fully. It is the rural village of Kümmersbruck-Bachweg, and here we can see it was excavated 2015 and 2018, and we can see here 500 dense archaeological features in an area of 1,400 square meters. That shouldn't interest us, but what should interest us, that is completely good dated. It all dates to the 8th, 9th century. There's dendrochronological and C14 dates. And what's more interesting for us are these red features. There are at least 25 pyrometallurgical objects which were really implemented inside this settlement, where there are superstructures. So it looks like, because I have never seen something before, like so many pyrometallurgical objects in an early medieval settlement. So something was going on here. It's proven by the slags. We have 150 kilograms of slags, which are sometimes refilled in these earth structures. And so we can say something here was really going on. This is, of course, also proven metallographic analysis. Don't worry about this. Don't look at it. I just want to tell you, we also did that stuff, which is boring, and iron was smelted and processed. But which is much more interesting, we have also sampled the charcoals. So we have 260 samples, which led us to, it's already almost two and a half kilograms, and we could evaluate 4,000 specimens. And for Bavaria, for instance, it's quite much. Also for Czech Republic, only in Prague and in Břeclav-Bohansko, there are more anthropological samples done. So this should not interest us, shouldn't interest us so much. But we can see we already have 17 taxa of wood used, and if we deal with it statistically, we can see there's 2 groups used in pyrometallurgical features. First, it's pine with coniferous trees, and second, oak with other deciduous trees. And this is very interesting because pine, for instance, is absolutely not natural in this environment. So it leads us to the statement that there was already high forest clearance because the demand of charcoal and iron was quite high. This is also proven by palynological studies. I don't want to go in detail with this, but we can already see that in the 8th, 9th century, there was something which we actually only knew from late Middle Ages, that the deforestation was already going on because of the need of charcoal. So what was going on here? You need to understand it's a rural settlement. It's not connected to any fortification. There is no, let's say, higher order architecture. So what was going on here in this very intensive, short-lived iron production settlement? And we have here a very interesting source. It comes from donation of the cloister to the cloister of St. Emmeram in Regensburg. And here is mentioned one interesting case. So we have 11 farmsteads in a Curtis near Lauterbach. It's not interesting where it is, but there is one free blacksmith living. And he has an unfree wife, 2 unfree children, and 37 slaves. We should understand this is quite a sum. So 14 men were actually working with him intra dobum haec. This means they were his apprentice men, they were working with him, and 23 women de negotio. And de negotio means they were actually trading. So we have here a very interesting case. There we have a free blacksmith which was already working for a market. This is, of course, Duby wouldn't accept it, but we have much more of these free blacksmiths mentioned historically for 790, for 890, for the 9th century, and later on they get actually even more rich. So this is why I would say we have here some kind of more or less independent production of blacksmith, a rural blacksmith, who was already working for a regional market. So let's get to case study 2. This is also in Bavaria, but west of Regensburg. It is the Altmühltal or Schwarzachtal Valley, and both valleys are situated west of Regensburg, as I said, and there's a very important iron production areas. So in this area, so you need to understand, was some kind of bone of contention between the Frankish and Bavarian duchy in the 8th, 9th century. So there was always a clash between the Bavarians and Carolingians. You already know this. So we can see here the Bavarian Altmühltal Valley around 700. And what is striking here, that we have some kind of a very densely cultural, let's say, cultural landscape or settled landscape. And we can see here they are all marked iron production sites which are spatially completely connected to places of power. May it be cortes or may it be fortifications. So we can see here there is not some, like in the case of in Kümmersbruck, there is some independent settlement of iron production, but these guys are apparently connected to higher order sites. So around 740, the whole shit changes. So in the course of in the 8th century, there was a very, really aggressive policy of the Franks against the Bavarians, and the Bavarians, of course, lost. And now we can see that the Frankish took their iron production to their fortifications and higher order sites. So the Carolingian elites seemingly transferred the iron production to the Schwarzach Valley. We can see it here in the north, and they built the iron production around their fortifications and their harbors. This is quite interesting, and this spatial transformation is, for me at least, a vivid proof for attached production. We learned it before. So the iron production was directly connected and enforced by the upper social strata. So in the in the last case study I want to present, we go to southern Moravia. What we can see here is the so-called state or polity of the Great Moravians, which was the first, let's say, Slavic proto-state. And what is important for here, there were a lot of proto-urban sites, agglomeration, we say, which were, of course, densely settled. One of the sites we dealt with is the so-called Mikočice Valley site, which is located in Hodonín district and southern Moravian region, and it is on the border between Czech Republic and Slovakia. And in the 9th century, this is important thing to understand, it has a high populace, around 1,000, 2,000 people, a local market, really high demand of iron. There was, of course, some sort of peace going on, and for the producers, there should be some kind of alienation from predators. So we can imagine it is some kind of high taboo only for Czechs. So, of course, I asked myself, how is the iron production structured here? And our study examined around 300 kilograms of pyrotechnical waste, slags, and ceramic objects here in the so-called Northern suburbium. We can see it here in red in the square. And we see that there is huge production or processing of iron going on. So we have ironworking slags, also some smelting slags, technical ceramics, ceramical slags, and it is all distributed quite evenly in this area with production debris. And we could also prove that was little iron only smelted, but 99% was only the processing of iron. So, which is quite interesting because they relied, this is another proof that they must have relied on some local market. So how did it work? According to the centralized model of specialization, the existence of a local market and a stable inflow of raw materials, and of course the high number of potential consumers and peace, as I mentioned, and certain securities most probably provided by the local institutions, the elites, they formed some kind of, let's say, biological sphere where specialized iron workers, like in a small city, let's say, could work here full-time and large scale without the direct interference of elites. Of course, no elite would care what one of these 2,000 guys were doing, producing some plowshares and so on. So this is some kind of third model of specialization. So let's make a conclusion. So production is not merely a technical or antiquarian thing. It's not only slags and pyrometallurgical devices, but all of this is embedded in social relations and political economical choices and dynamics. So with this, I would suppose we can also understand early medieval economy as a whole, which was extremely heterogeneous. We have no single monolithic explanation. So in Kümmersbruck, for instance, we can see independent intensive production, which was most probably directed to some kind of super regional market. So we can maybe also suggest that this blacksmith who was working there, or the group of blacksmiths, were under some kind of leash service. In Altmühltal, which is the same time, just 50 to 80 kilometers southwest, we see here attached production, which is always bound to places of power, which is most probably connected to some kind of land opening. So the Frankish came there and first needed to structure everything, so they had their blacksmiths by their own. And the centralized production, which Mikulčice settlement agglomeration is a very interesting proof for. So we can see here that also at the same time, of course, in another place, blacksmiths could work almost independently. So all of these forms can exist simultaneously, of course, and this is actually quite interesting, as I said, to understand the holistics of early medieval iron economy. So this is the end.
Presentation from Mark's career case studies. So I will announce our second speaker for this session, Veronica from the University of Warsaw, spatial and temporal distribution of strongholds in the Arzica River Basin, natural and cultural landscapes. Please, Veronica.
Thank you. Is it working? Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Weronika Bałdyga and I'm a PhD student from University of Warsaw. I'm participating in a scientific project dedicated to the research of archaeological complex of Ciepłe. And our complex lies in the Wieżyca River Basin, and that's the reason why I want to tell you a little bit more about this territory. So first of all, I want to present to you the roadmap of my presentation, so you will know when I will be talking about particular things. So first of all, I want to present to you the meaning of the term river basin, and then we will jump into the Wieżyca River Basin and the strongholds from this territory and the chronology of those strongholds. Then I will tell you a little bit more about particular sites, which will be the Ciepłe archaeological complex, Garczyn, Gniew, Janiszewo, and Zamek Kiszewski. And at the end, I will sum up my presentation and tell you something more about my plans for the future. So according to the Collins Dictionary, a river basin is the area of land from which all the water flows into a particular river. And you can ask, why is it important for my study? So I will tell you why. Our principal archaeological complex is situated in the vicinity of two big rivers in Poland. One of them is Wisła, which is the largest river in Poland, if you didn't know this, and the second river is Wieżyca. We think that the strategic placement of the archaeological complex played a crucial role into the development of the emerging Piast state. And in the attached image, you can see the geographical context of our basin and how it looks like. And also I wrote down the Wieżyca River tributaries because, as I know, they can be challenging for non-Polish speakers to pronounce, so I will read them aloud for you. They are called Mała Wieżyca, which means small Wieżyca, Wietcisa, Piesienica, Węgiermuca, and Janka. Historians currently believe that the territory of eastern Pomerania belonged to the Piast state as early as the reign of Mieszko I. But to be honest, archaeological data does not prove this. And all of those sites that I found in the Wieżyca River basin were identified as early medieval sites, and all of them were built in the proximity of those rivers. But we have some problems with this because the above strongholds have been identified as early medieval sites 50 years ago, and now we know more things about, for example, ceramics or cemeteries. I noticed that archaeologists in the past didn't do a lot of excavations in this territory, but only did small surveys, excavations, research, and on the basis of those surveys, it has been determined that those sites are probably from early medieval period. This dating for me is uncertain, and I noticed that only 9 of those sites have documents from those excavations, and I realized that only 7 of them are from the period that I'm interested in, which is period from 11 to 12 centuries, and 2 of those sites are unfortunately not from this period, but I found out that 19 of those sites are really weren't the case of study, so we need to, in our project, we need to find out the dating of those sites. And this is the map from Wieżyca River Basin, and I will tell you more about those sites. So first of all, I want to present to you the archaeological complex of Ciepłe, which is our main case of study. It was the biggest complex in the Wieżyca River Basin, and we believe that in the past it could be the center of power from the early Piast period. The site consists of 3 strongholds, 2 cemeteries, and a few open settlements, and it's the most popular by the cemetery number 6, because in the cemetery archaeologists in the past found chamber graves and Viking burials, and the whole complex is dating in the 11th and 12th centuries, and we believe that it controlled the Vistula road to some extent. And currently we are working on the stronghold number 3. And as you can see on those leader pictures, all of those sites are destroyed by the agriculture because on this site there is a really fertile soil, and it's being destroyed by the local farmers. And this is the map of our complex. And as I already mentioned, we are currently working on the Ciepłe 3. But we were also in the past few months doing survey on Ciepłe 2 and Ciepłe 4. The next stronghold is located in the Garczyn. The Garczyn stronghold has been preserved in a state of good condition and has been the subject of a relatively good investigation. The presence of early medieval period pottery has been identified on the site, as well as the objects crafted from iron or animal bones. The settlement is oval in shape and it's currently occupied by the forest, which is a little bit destroying this site, but not as much as our farmer in Ciepłe. The next stronghold is located in Gniew, and the Gniew site has also been a subject of good research. The stronghold is currently located within the town limits, and in this place there are no buildings, but only a meadow. And on the site, archaeologists also found early medieval ceramic and objects of everyday use made by people living in this area in the past. And you, because I think that most of you know about castles from Teutonic Order in the northern Poland, so you can know Gniew from this castle, but there is not a correlation between our stronghold, this early medieval stronghold, and the castle from Teutonic Order. The next site is located in the Janiszewo, and this site has not been a subject of any form of excavations. Archaeologists conduct only minor surface investigations in this place, and then archaeologists found pottery and bones, and, which is surprising, one coin. And the stronghold is good, is well preserved, although it's being destroyed by the Wieżyca River, which is eroding the surrounding area. And on this side there is also arable land, but in this particular stronghold there is a forest, so there is not so bad for this stronghold. And the last site is located in the Zamek Kiszewski, in the village of Zamek Kiszewski. And the site has been extensively investigated, with the former stronghold having been transformed into a castle. And you, as I already mentioned, you can know Gniew from the castle from Teutonic Order, but in Zamek Kiszewski there is also a castle from Teutonic Order, but in this place they built the castle on the same territory as a stronghold, and in the Gniew situation was different. And in this place, archaeologists found remains of early medieval buildings, and of course they found a lot of ceramics and everyday use objects. And the area, to sum up, the area of the Wieżyca Basin was really important in the past, but it has not been the subject of extensive research. Only a few sites has been studied in the greater depth. And in my PhD, I intend to reconstruct the landscape of the Wieżyca River Basin with a particular focus of the Ciepłe complex from 1,000 years ago. This will provide a reference point for other sites from the early Middle Ages in Pomerania. We intend to answer the questions, a few questions of why exactly this was the location of the largest complex to be built. And for example, we wonder how this complex relates to individual microregions, and what were the environmental conditions of settlement in this area. And in addition, an examination of the region can be a starting point for further studies of the settlement on this macroregion. And thank you for your attention.
So thank you, and I will announce our postdoc from Wrocławskim Muzeum Archeologicznym, and he's finally in your landscape with the European lens, ideal types and power dynamics. Technical assistance is great.
It's his job.
Yeah.
Right, so hello everyone, thank you for having me. Now for something a little bit different. My topic is going to be a little bit more abstract, but please bear with me as I had a little bit way too much coffee and forgot my notes at the apartment. It's going to be slow, fast, sorry. Alright, so what are you about to see? After the brief introduction, why did I draw some inspiration from Weberian sociology? I will show you two ways how I draw on it. It is the method of ideal type and topic of power as research topic. Right, there are two features of Weberian theory I am employing in my work, in past and present. In my master's and current PhD thesis, and its ideal type is a tool for construction, structural archaeological data, and for interpretation making, as a power as a research question or research topic. Or you might ask, why do I do so? Why Weberian sociology when I don't have any formal sociological training whatsoever? I believe that it can provide us answers or just guidelines for several challenges in medieval or historical archaeology, which is overladen or heavy orientation on historical narratives or a lack of implementation on theory. In the first place, I got inspired by one article by Rainer Schreck in Historical Archaeology published in 2013, just claiming that historical archaeology should be considered as a part of wider cultural sciences that incorporate anthropology and sociological theories and approaches. All right, what's ideal type? It's sort of an empirical theoretical mental construct formulated or based on research or research intentions of the researchers. It's a part of Max Weber's understanding sociology, which is striving for generalization, for understanding of subject meaning of social actions, and for causality. What Max Weber intended in the beginning was reaching some sort of objectivity in social sciences, which I'm not really a big fan of. But yeah. So what's good for it enables us to understand social actions by contrasting the ideal type with the actual case. To show you but a little example of what I did in the past. The first endeavor of mine in medieval archaeology was were the deserted medieval villages, and what grinded my gears a bit was the way the abandonment, and the demise of deserted medieval villages was interpreted. Usually in the studies I went through and I used during my studies was that the normal modus operandi was to find out the last mention of living village in historical sources, the first mention of the deserted villages, and if there was any war event going on, and if there were charcoals found on the deserted medieval villages, it would be possible to claim with great confidence that the site demised during the conflict. I tried to pick a little bit different perspective on this, and I have formulated a couple of, so to speak, idol types based on studies on deserted medieval villages, formative processes in archaeology and ethnoarchaeological studies, such as abandonment of regions and settlements by Steve Tomka and Catherine Cameron, and work of Stevenson, who researched mining sites in the southern Yukon region in Northern America. So I sort of changed the unit of analysis from village to household. I have explicitly stated what the criteria are for different ideal types, which were more of them than the original two I have already described. Some of them being like presence or absence of clusters of valuable things as an indicator of hidden activities and so on. I have two basic idol types. One, homesteads where abandonment was planned, and homesteads abandoned in hurry, where there were basic subtypes of both. One where there were plans to return and non-plans to return. There were some subclasses of these as well, but I'm not going to lose any time or your time for that. Well, even though the final conclusion of the work wasn't surprising in many regards, I think the change of the unit of analysis and the criteria mentioned just provided us with more of a plastic idea why the village was abandoned. And when I decided what to do next in my archaeological career, when I was looking for a topic for my PhD studies, I went for a power, which is an important facet of Weberian sociology as well. The full title of my PhD thesis is Power in Medieval Landscape, Changes of Landscape as Indicator of Transformation of Power of the Powerful. One of its goals is to present the concept of power to medieval archaeology, as both archaeologists and historians are using the term quite often, but mostly without any theoretical background. I wish to analyze the power analysis, power infrastructure in landscape, and I wish to compare different state of the power infrastructures among the long duration of 6th to 16th century, which I hope will be possible thanks to employment of already existing digital infrastructure, such as archaeological map of Czech Republic and so on. What the heck is power? Like usually when we are thinking power, we just think about some figures of power, like bishops or kings, or some military units, things like that. There are many definitions of it. Most of them draw from Max Weber, who described power as being the chance of men or group of men to realize their own will in communal action, even against the resistance of the others who are participating in the action. I'm building on the approaches of Weberian historical sociologist Michael Mann, who describes power as ability to pursue and attain goal through mastery of one's environment, and social power as being mastery exercise over other people. Sometimes in prehistory archaeological, mostly these Weberian stances are being employed, but sometimes they are being limited to individual coercive power and described only in terms of domination. I believe this is not the case of attitudes or approaches by Michael Mann, whose power is not coercive only, because he describes ideological, economic, military, and political power, and it's not mere domination either, as power can be distributive, collective, extensive, intensive, and so on. You might think that it's all nice, but how to research it, what to do with that. Just before I start, there are a couple of premises of my PhD, that the unit of analysis of my PhD in landscape is so-called landscape feature, like castle, village, monasteries, or towns, which is partially determined by the state of research, like data infrastructure, which uses these units. And I'm using the term power infrastructure, which is sort of a sum of landscape features belonging to one actor as a ruler, noble family, urban community, or class of actors as a nobility in given period. And I want to study the power of manifestation in different periods and in different case studies, one of them being 13th and half of 14th century. Before doing that, I had to answer several questions like which landscape features manifest power, what kind of power they bear, whose power do they represent, and how do we measure it. I decided to answer it using a sort of analysis of literature, when I use quotes from selected historical and archaeological literature and then putting it into my database with putting down data of the quote, what the landscape feature does it concern, what kind of power does the landscape feature represent, and what's the specific function inside it, what kind of actor is this landscape feature connected to, and if there is any measurable attributes we can see on in a real life landscape features. Here is just one example of that. Here we have one quote from one article by historian Liborian, which is it's about castles, about the ideological dimension, so to speak, and how the towers of refuge are not only militaristic stuff, but also symbolic in its nature. It concerns nobility, and if there should be some measurable stuff, it would be that the presence of the tower of refuge is an element of symbolic representation of status. This particular quote, it doubles in my database as, of course, these towers had some military meaning as well. Well, what I do next, I try to build sort of an ideal type of these landscape features, and to do that, I just play with data a bit. So in the left, we can just see the social network analysis I try to perform, like connecting the ideology power of some sort of landscape features and the relevant social actors. On the right, we can just see how the meaning in the selected literature again, how the meanings changed during the centuries. I'm going to be here until Saturday, so if you have any questions on that, we can just have a talk about that. This just to demonstrate what's possible to do with that. But what's the crucial thing about it is that I'm building these idol types again. Here we can see example of castle and its ideological power, and there are two sort of function it has. It might be a manifestation of status, reflection of lifestyle, and many others. Here are some examples of measurable attributes. At the moment, what I'm trying to do is to turn these to some measurable things, just to put on some coefficient of power which would be numerical and would be comparable in time and mostly inside the case studies. Here is some just hypothetical values of the power coefficients, some hypothetical actors. And based on the power coefficients, I will measure or am measuring at the moment. It will be possible just to compare the power strategies of given actors. For example, here at the actor 2, we could see that this hypothetical actor would rely heavily on economic power and so on. I wish to study power dynamics as well, and to compare these strategies, across my case studies. In the future, I want to employ some digital methods as well as principal component analysis, just to see what are the dominant configuration of these power infrastructures, and for example, Gini coefficient, just to see the distribution of different power coefficients among classes of actors. All right, I hope it made sense at least a little bit, and thank you for your attention.
So our last but not the least speaker, Joan Hampshire, from Scotland, out of Blue, evaluating pilgrimage from the American perspective. Please.
Technical assistant needs to start it once again because there are some problems. That's as usual on the last presentation. We have problems with technical stuff. Sorry for that. It should be fine right now.
Hi, and good afternoon. My name's Jo, and today I'm going to be giving you an insight into my multidisciplinary research where I re-evaluate the sea and coastal margins in the early medieval period, which for the purpose of this research is 400 to 1200 AD, in order to assess ecclesiastical placement and maritime pilgrimage. Early medieval writers perpetuated the nature and divide of the land and sea with a dichotomy of good and evil, the latter being the sea. For example, Pliny in the 1st century AD waxes lyrical that the sea was a space of the most awful creatures, with the largest number of species and most hybrid and monstrous beings. And in the depths of the sea, animal life was not subject to order, but rather confusion and chaos. This analysis is drawn from Christian writings, as within Christian literature, including the Bible itself, the sea was a malign force which threatens God's creation of the land. According to Job, it was the dwelling of the sea monster Leviathan, whilst in Revelation the sea is synonymous with Hades and death. All of these conjured images are focused around fate-filled apocalyptic-style messages. This is in contrast to the land, which has a less pessimistic sentiment attached. However, as the medieval period progressed, the imagery and perception of the sea changed. As the age of saints dawned from the 4th century onwards, and missionary work and pilgrimage became part of the fabric of Christian life, a new ecclesiastical posture emerged in relation to the sea. The mobility of missionaries combined with their miracles made saints both local, national, and international the marvel superheroes of the day, bringing the sea's dark elements to spread the word of God. This influenced a change in rhetoric regarding the sea as a periphery of God's great kingdom, with even the nave of a church being derived from the Latin navis, meaning ship. This new message also involved the emergence of proprietary rituals on board boats and ships and on land to protect all seafarers, and ultimately allows for spiritual dominance of the sea as well as the land. Despite misaligned perceptions, the sea was in reality a conduit for merchants, travellers, missionaries and pilgrims alike. So today I'm going to talk to you about about my research, and the geographical area of that is the Irish Sea, just off the west coast of the United Kingdom. This sea connects the coastal land of Wales, Cumbria, Mercia in England, the Western Isles of Scotland, the Isle of Man, and the east coast of Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. The defined commonality between these areas is that they all host terrestrial pilgrimage routes in proximity to the coast, as shown here on the slide on the left. The case study that I'm going to talk to you about today is in actual fact called the Rins and Machars of Galloway, which is in southwest Scotland. This is a maritime landscape consisting of 110 nautical miles of coastline, which is as much as a part of this area as that of the terrestrial nature, making the Rins and the Machars readily accessible from the sea. For me, the Rins and the Machars has a multiplicitous hegemony with its terrestrial pilgrimage route of the Whithorn Way, its historic shared cultural and spiritual traits garnered through interaction across the Irish Sea, combined with a coastal landscape littered with numerous ecclesiastical sites. Most notable of these ecclesiastical sites are those of Whithorn Priory in the Machars and Kirkmadrin, also known as Toskerton, during the medieval period, which is in the Rins. These can also be considered the main pilgrimage magnets of this area of Scotland. To give you some context, Whithorn Priory laid its foundations in the 4th to 5th century, with its notoriety as the cradle of Scottish Christianity, propelled by the writing of Bede, who in AD 731 wrote about the shining white Candida Casa, which has been presumed as being Whithorn until recently, with contemporary research suggesting that Whithorn was in actual fact a royal centre in the early medieval period. Bede also wrote about the work and miracles of St Ninian, who was buried here, making Whithorn a renowned pilgrimage destination within the Irish Sea Zone from the early medieval period to the present day. Kirkmadrin is located on the opposite headland to Whithorn and the Rins, and according to the testament of Prior Malcolm Fleming, Kirkmadrin belonged to the Priory of Whithorn, making it a sister house to the same in the early medieval period. However, Kirkmadrin's infamy is really drawn through its collection of 12 sculptured Christianized stones, and could in actual fact be the real Candida Casa of Bede's writings, but that's another paper for another day. However, Kirkmadrin never really gathered pace as a religious destination, but what is important from my research is that these two sites are sat not only within a landscape of my case study area, but also within an accessible seascape, linking these sites and the surrounding ecclesiastical sites to the rest of the Irish Sea Zone, especially when you consider that travel by water was the easiest and fastest form of travel in the early medieval period. So to give you an idea, the West Rins to Belfast is approximately 30 nautical miles. The east coast of the Rins to the Isle of Man is approximately 43 nautical miles, and the Rins to Anglesey, which is in North Wales, is only 86 nautical miles, thus emphasising the connectivity across the Irish Sea. With a nautical mile being 1.5 land miles or 1.85 kilometres for the non-nautical amongst us, and from the completion of this research, 1 nautical mile takes about 20 minutes in your prime after a really good breakfast in a small hand-powered craft, well for me, a kayak. This means that from the Rins to the Irish mainland in the summer, with a good tide and a good wind, this could be less than a day's journey. So by using a multidisciplinary methodology, I've been able to incorporate modern methods of immersive, archaeological, phenomenological and historical research to increase evidential data sets. This is evinced within the case study area a landscape with 2 prominent ecclesiastical sites, which I've outlined, and an abundance of ecclesiastical sites, either in a coastal position or within view of the sea, all ranging from the 5th to the 11th century. So for me, the question has become, why are there so many ecclesiastical sites so close to the sea as there's scant evidence of settlement at these sites? Well, the answer lies in strategic decision-making, planning, and belies the relationship between land and sea, sailor, and cleric. So I've extended the traditional landscape of archaeology approaches and incorporated the sea. So for me, this was sea work, not field work. Could the sea, for all its profligate doom and gloom in the early medieval period, actually be pivotal in all things coastal, with all those ecclesiastical sites positioned around the sea? So I immersed myself quite literally within the sea, although for the record I only capsized twice, and all in the name of science. Namely, to gain a phenomenological sea work experience and perspective of the land from the sea. This was in combination of devising a set of wide-ranging behavioural and physical sea characteristics, which when collated could then be analysed alongside the placement data of where ecclesiastical and secular monumentality, such as landing places, was located on the coast, with connectivity and the relationship to the land, to the sea and to each other being all important. Specific characteristics of depth, approachability and visibility have been assessed at various meterage and at various bearings from the shore in different conditions such as high tide, low tide, spring tides at night and during the day, all in different seasons in various weather from sea haws and mist to rain, no wind and high wind. Visibility, accessibility and proximity of ecclesiastical sites, the foreshore, the headland, sea conditions, temperature, currents and sea depths and sea marks, and even noting sea and animal sightings and behaviour has all been gathered using natural navigation techniques, with modern technology only being utilised when health and safety required it, which probably explains why I've capsized so much. All this data and phenomenological experiences have been used to analyse the land from the sea. However, using the seascape characteristics and subsequent analysis, I've been able to determine 147 possible early medieval landing sites across the Rins and the Mackers, all of which can be seen on this map. However, what I've also realised is that these sites are in evident clusters or in zones. These 10 notable area clusters or landing place zones contain not only proven landing sites, but are twinned with ecclesiastical sites along the coast, which suggests a symbiotic relationship. These zones, and the reason for my hypothesis, is based predominantly on visibility and accessibility, which is dictated in part by meteorological events such as winds, which I'll come to shortly, which in turn impacts on sea behaviour such as waves and currents. The topography of the seabed and the sea's interaction with the coast itself is also really important. So to clarify, one landing zone is inaccessible due to wind direction causing surface waves, which could blow your vessel onto the rocks. Then you would move to use the next landing zone to avoid calamity, perhaps to a more sheltered landing place, allowing for safe passage, particularly if you're a pilgrim on a boat with limited nautical experience. This gives rise to the theory that the inshore waterways at the medieval period or the early medieval period were actual highways, quite similar to terrestrial motorways or superhighways that we have today, with rest stops pertinently placed at intervals to allow for rest and recuperation. So let me just outline the connectivity of the landing place with the ecclesiastical placement. I don't believe that it's fate that the ecclesiastical site is placed where the ecclesiastical site is placed within the landscape. The results indicate that the ecclesiastical placement is all to do with where the landing place is sited. So let me explain. Working out tidal wave patterns and how they behave and work within different areas of Luce Bay is really critically important. The example here shows how in the approach to these two bays within the Mackers and Luce Bay, the tide and waves pull in a certain direction, making manageability of a small craft difficult if you were to sail against it, meaning you are propelled in a certain direction at a certain time. The blue arrows on this diagram show an example of wave direction, and these are not caused solely by meteorological events which can and will change the surface water, but because of the seabed represented here by the dotted contours and how they interact with the sea. So to explain that behaviour again for the non-nautical amongst us, the waves touch the bottom sooner and refract towards the points noted by the arrows, concentrating their wave energy. So this is good in a smaller landing craft as the wave energy is spread out, causing much smaller waves. So how does this prove a landing place? Well, the data analysis from the seascape characteristics collated from actually experiencing sea behaviours when sailing this stretch in different weathers has helped to understand the positioning of that ecclesiastical site on the shore. This is a really pertinent detail, especially when combined with historical data, place name analysis and even folklore of the area. So depending on the characteristics outlined, depends and dictates where you can land. As for the ecclesiastical sites, as I've said, they are positioned with purpose. This particular one is situated on the land, slightly elevated, right next to a landing place, sheltered into the grey whack rock of the hillside and the cliff within this particular area. It's really, really marked as you approach it. You can see it from afar, a great visible sea mark or go-to point, and it's also within easy access of the pilgrimage route, the Whittle Way, which is just behind the ecclesiastical site on the headland. This is just one example because time's short, but there are plenty of others that I could give you within this area of coastline that offer similar results. Just briefly, as I've mentioned, let's consider the wind. This is the most definitive factor and dominant factor when traversing a seascape, above rain, mist, tidal behaviour, and even above the desire of a passenger or a commercial requirement. That's not based on any kind of modelling data, but on the human factor of handling a boat. The wind's behaviour is impacted on by topography of the land and seabed, and wind behaves differently inshore than it is offshore. And I don't know whether the microphone put this up, if you just, my pointer's not working. So the inshore is just a small bay that you can see, two little inshore areas, and then the offshore is there to the left of the side, which is the exposed coast that would take you to Ireland. Wave height is also affected by wind speed, wind duration and fetch, which is the distance over water that the wind blows in a single direction. Wind speed is slow, only small waves result regardless of wind duration or fetch, and vice versa, with the wind and wave combo having the ability to tip you over in a small vessel. Types and directions of wind change seasonally, which has been demonstrated and experienced through the results of this research. This indicates that there must be a seasonal use of these landing sites, dictating when and where crossings for commercial purpose, such as trade or for spiritual journeys, could and would have taken place. Additionally, it needs to be remembered that coming into a landing place is different to leaving a site and traversing the sea to another site. Sailing windward can in actual fact double the length of a journey, and that's without waiting time for the right tide and other weather conditions. Being on the sea and part of this dynamic environment, along with the archaeology that I studied, the monumentality of the land, the place names, has made me reconsider the sea as being as compliant with the human story as that of the land. The sea, by its physical force, shapes not only the landscape but identities and creates a sense of place. It has a social, economic and spiritual context which needs to be considered. The sea for maritime pilgrims was not as calamitous as perhaps once thought in the early medieval period. Through traversing the coast within these landing zones and maritime superhighways on a seasonal basis meant that fate at the hands of God was instead imbued to sailors, and the acumen combined with clerics' decisive strategies of where to place the monumentality on the land. This changes the medieval seascape from a great abyss to an expanse that has a tremendous impact on dictating the activity and culture of the medieval terrestrial story. Thank you for listening to my research.
So please,
I will pass you the microphone.
Just a while ago, there's the model of interpretation given by the German archaeologists to see the recovery of post-war economy, in particular, the iron production as a bottom-up process. And this involves